I still remember the time my eccentric uncle invited me to work with him for a day, not because he needed help, but because he wanted someone to witness his genius. As I arrived at his workshop, I noticed the air was thick with the smell of sawdust and varnish, and the sound of power tools humming in the background. My uncle greeted me with a firm handshake and said, "Today's project is going to be nothing short of revolutionary." I had no idea what he meant by that, but I was eager to find out. My curiosity piqued as I watched my uncle carefully measure out a pile of wooden planks, his hands moving with a precision that belied his wild hair and bushy beard. But here's the part that still doesn't add up. Why did he insist on using drywall screws to hold together an entire bookshelf? As we worked, my uncle regaled me with tales of his adventures as a carpenter, from building homes for families in need to creating intricate wooden sculptures for art galleries. He seemed like a man who lived life on his own terms, and I found myself drawn to his unapologetic eccentricity. But the more I saw of his workshop, the more I realized that it was also a hotbed of chaos. Tools were scattered everywhere, and half-finished projects hung precariously from the ceiling. And then there was the smell, a potent mix of wood stain and something else, something sweet and acrid at the same time. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could someone as clearly talented as my uncle be so flawed? But here's the thing. His imperfections were also what made him brilliant. He saw things in a way that others didn't. In a world of straight lines and right angles, he was a master of curves and irregular shapes. As we took a break for lunch, I noticed my uncle eyeing me with a curious expression. "You know," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial, "I've been working on something new, something that's going to change the face of carpentry forever." My heart skipped a beat as I wondered what it could be, but he just winked at me and said, "Not yet, kiddo." As we continued to work, my uncle's obsession with this mysterious project grew more intense. He would pause in the middle of a task, his eyes glazing over as if lost in thought, before suddenly snapping back to attention. And then there was the time he discovered a hidden stash of antique woodworking tools, old planes and chisels that had been collecting dust for decades. But what really got my attention was when my uncle pulled out an ancient scroll from beneath his workbench, its surface cracked and yellowed with age. As I watched in awe, he began to carefully unroll it, revealing intricate drawings of wooden joints and ornate carvings. "This," he said, his voice full of reverence, "is the original plan for the Taj Mahal." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How did this relate to our work? As the day wore on, my uncle's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would stop mid-sentence, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for something or someone. And then there were the moments of pure genius, like when he solved a problem that had been stumping him all morning with a single, elegant solution. As the sun began to set, my uncle stepped back from our latest creation and surveyed it proudly. "You see," he said, his eyes twinkling, "this is what I've been working towards all day. This is. He hesitated for a moment before finishing with a flourish. "This is the future of carpentry." And as I looked around at the chaotic workshop, the half-finished projects and scattered tools, I realized that my uncle was right, in his own maddening way. As we packed up to leave, I couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead for my uncle's mysterious project. Would it change the world of carpentry forever? And would he ever reveal its true purpose? One thing's for sure, after working with him for a day, I'll never look at chaos in the same way again. I couldn't believe how much had changed since we'd started that morning. The air was thick with sawdust and sweat, but my uncle's workshop seemed transformed, imbued with a sense of possibility that I hadn't seen before. As we loaded up his old truck, he turned to me with a mischievous glint in his eye and said, "You know, kiddo, you'd be surprised what people are willing to pay for." He winked at me, but I had no idea what he was getting at. The drive back home was a blur of laughter and conversation. We talked about everything from the latest sports game to our favorite childhood memories. My uncle's energy was infectious, and by the time we pulled into his driveway, I felt like I'd been on an adventure, not just a day's work. As we said our goodbyes, he leaned in close and whispered, "Keep this under your hat for now, but I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about my little project soon." He winked again, and I shook my head, laughing. But as I drove away from his house, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it all, something beneath the surface of my uncle's enthusiasm and eccentricity. Was he really just building some revolutionary new tool? Or was this about something bigger? And what exactly did he mean by "people are willing to pay for"? I found myself replaying our conversation in my head, searching for clues. As I pulled into my own driveway, I noticed a strange package. On the porch, it was wrapped in brown paper and twine, with no return address. My heart skipped a beat as I wondered if this could be related to my uncle's project. I carefully unwrapped the paper to reveal a small wooden box inside. It was beautifully crafted, with intricate carvings along the lid. A note attached to the box read, "For your eyes only, kiddo." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that this must be connected to what my uncle had been working on. But what did it mean? And why had he left it here for me to find? I turned the box over in my hands, trying to make sense of it all. As I examined the carvings more closely, I noticed a small inscription etched into one corner, E pluribus unum. It was the motto of the United States. But what did it have to do with this mysterious box? And what exactly had my uncle gotten himself into? The questions swirled in my head as I stood there on my porch, the wooden box clutched tightly in my hands. But one thing was for sure. After working with my eccentric uncle for just one day, I'd stumbled into something much bigger than I ever could have imagined. As I stood there, trying to make sense of it all, I heard a loud rumbling sound coming from behind me. I turned around to see my uncle's old truck pulling up to the curb, spewing out clouds of black smoke and leaving a trail of dust in its wake. He climbed out, grinning from ear to ear, and strode over to where I was standing. "Ah, kiddo, I see you found the package," he said, nodding towards the box still clutched in my hands. I was starting to get worried that maybe I'd left it too late. He winked at me, but I could sense a hint of unease lurking beneath his usual bonhomie. "What's going on, Uncle?" I asked him, trying to keep my voice steady. "What is this all about?" But he just chuckled and clapped me on the back, saying, "Oh, it's nothing you need to worry about, kiddo, just a little side project of mine." I was starting to get annoyed. Now clearly there was something going on here that my uncle wasn't telling me. And what really grated was that he seemed to be enjoying this air of mystery surrounding himself. I mean, couldn't he just be honest with me for once? As we walked back into the house together, I noticed a strange look on his face, almost like he was sizing me up. "Listen, kiddo," he said suddenly, stopping in front of the kitchen sink and turning to face me. "I want you to know that this is just between us, okay? Whatever it is that's going on here, it's not for outsiders." He looked at me with a serious expression, his eyes narrowing slightly. But before I could ask him what he meant by that, my aunt burst into the kitchen, looking frazzled. "Oh dear, I'm so sorry to interrupt," she said, "but we really need to talk about this ASAP. There's been a call from someone at the, you know." She glanced at my uncle, who nodded curtly in response. And that was when it hit me. Whatever this mysterious box was all about, it must be connected to the strange phone calls my aunt had mentioned earlier, the ones she'd tried to brush off as mere solicitors. But I'd caught a whiff of something more in her voice. And now, with this latest development, I realized that I might actually have stumbled into something much bigger than just my uncle's eccentricities. The questions swirled in my head like a tornado, but one thing was for sure. I had to get to the bottom of it all. My aunt continued, her voice low and urgent, as she handed my uncle a piece of paper with scribbled notes on it. He scanned them quickly, his eyes narrowing into a sharp line. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep up, but they just exchanged a look that told me I wasn't privy to the information. My uncle finally spoke up, his voice dripping with an air of superiority. "It seems we have an unexpected visitor coming tomorrow morning." The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. There was something ominous in his tone that made me wonder what kind of person this visitor could be. As I watched, a mix of curiosity and trepidation swirling inside me, my uncle's expression turned from confident to calculating. He began pacing around the room, his eyes darting back and forth between the notes on the paper and some invisible point beyond our small kitchen. My aunt stood frozen, her hands clasped together tightly, as if she was trying to contain a secret. The air seemed to thicken, with an unspoken understanding between them, leaving me feeling like an outsider who'd stumbled into a private conversation. "What kind of visitor?" I pressed on, trying to make sense of the cryptic warning. My uncle finally stopped pacing and turned to face us, his eyes glinting with a knowing light. "Someone from the community," he said, the word dripping with an air of reverence that made my aunt nod in agreement. I raised an eyebrow, sensing there was more to it than just some friendly neighbor dropping by for coffee. "What community?" I asked, but my uncle simply smiled and said, "You'll find out soon enough." He turned back to his pacing, leaving me with more questions than answers. As we sat in silence, the weight of unspoken secrets hanging between us like a palpable fog, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was very wrong. My aunt's usually warm smile had given way to a tense, worried expression, and my uncle's usual air of bonhomie had curdled into something almost sinister. I glanced around the room, trying to distract myself from the growing unease. The kitchen was spotless as always, but there was a faint smell of something burning on the stove. Or perhaps it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. My eyes landed on a small, leather-bound book lying open on the counter. It seemed out of place among the usual family photos and recipe notes. "Is that?" I started to ask, but my aunt quickly intervened, snatching up the book and tucking it under her arm as if she didn't want me to see its contents. "Oh, just some old history," she said with a forced laugh, but I could sense there was more to it than that. As we continued in the strained silence, I couldn't help but wonder what secrets my uncle's community might be hiding, and whether our little family gathering would soon turn into something much darker. My aunt's words sent a shiver down my spine, and I found myself glancing around the room for any sign of trouble brewing. My uncle, oblivious to the tension he'd created, continued chattering away about his latest project, some sort of revolutionary new invention that was going to change the world. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at this claim. My uncle's history with harebrained schemes wasn't exactly encouraging. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the living room, followed by the sound of shattering glass and muffled curses. My aunt let out a deep sigh and quickly excused herself to go clean up the mess, leaving me alone with my uncle in the kitchen. He beamed at me with an uncharacteristic smile, saying, "Don't worry about it, kiddo, just a little creative experimentation." I wasn't so sure. As we walked into the living room together, I was hit with a scene from Chaos Theory come to life. Books scattered everywhere, vases shattered on the floor, and a half-built contraption taking up most of the space. My aunt reappeared, dusting off her hands and muttering something about needing to reorganize her favorite vase collection. It wasn't until I spotted a small fire crackling in the corner that I realized what had really happened. My uncle's latest experiment had gotten out of hand, and judging by the look on his face, it was only just beginning.